Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. This video is about my official stance on how things are governed in America. Now, the Constitution is supposed to be the highest law of the land, and international treaties are supposed to be the second highest law, as what I'm told, and then federal law and so on and so forth. So, regardless if that's true or not, because it doesn't really matter, what matters is there's a bunch of people that coerce people, and they group together in political groups, social clubs, groups that, have been described very often as cult-like groups, right? I just saw a Middle Ground video about, part of it at least, about ex-liberals and ex-conservatives, sharing their opinions and their ideas and so on and so forth. And they describe both parties as cults. Okay, for the most part, they said these are like cults, and that they left one cult and they went to the other side, and the other side that left that side and went to the other side said that they weren't a cult. So the people who went from Republican to Democrat said that the Republican Party was a cult. People who went from Democrat to Republican said that the Democratic Party was a cult. Okay, and they cited woke stuff, religious thinking, what have you. Now, what is more obvious than this to me is Freemasonry, right? Because some Freemasons are Democrats, some Freemasons are Republicans. A lot of the presidents and the famous figures in history were Freemasons, like George Washington, Benjamin Franklin. I'm pretty sure both Roosevelts were president, and other people as well. In fact, Abraham Lincoln said he didn't want to be a Mason because he didn't want people to think that he won the election because he was a Mason. And that kind of power, as JFK pointed out, is not something that's compatible with the values and the Constitution that have to do with true freedom, not occult liberty, right? Justice, just ice, and liberty, liberty. And when you change the ty at the end of liberty, and you put the y before the t, you get YT. So you get like bird's cold, and whitey. And with justice, you get just ice. Now, if you're not smart enough to put that wordplay together and put together that that's not a coincidence, you should probably just keep your mouth shut, right? A little kid could tell you why I'm right, literally, Look up an anagram if you need to look it up. My goodness. Okay, so when we look at this thing, we see that there's a bunch of control freak police officers, right? And even the ones who are nicer, they kind of come into that control freak spirit when they kind of exert authority in a secular and profane sense and so on. When they're arresting somebody, like say a bunch of cops come up and they say freeze, they're all in that same kind of control freak spirit, and lots of them, they kind of maintain that kind of spirit, right? It's part of their flow. And so it is with a lot of Freemasons that I've met personally, I've seen in my life and so on and so forth, that I've seen pictures of, that I've read about, what have you. Okay, so it is with a lot of government people, a lot of rich people. Okay, so when you look at this thing, that doesn't allow for freedom, right? How am I going to assemble anybody if everyone's being coerced by social clubs and government groups and so on and so forth, right? And blackmailed and threatened by police and so on and so forth. How am I going to assemble people together and say, okay, let's stand for what is right, and let's make this world a better place? Okay, the reason why that's not been happening, I've been trying for years and years, is because it's a coercion-based state. Okay. That's the main way things work is for coercion, and there's an emphasis on sexual control. There's a lot of LGBT groups that have gone the distance in recent years to make it so that they have more sexual control, and they're willing to gaslight, and in the word gaslight is a play on words for gaze light. Okay, and so as many of you know, they're fuming me and poisoning to make it harder for me to speak. I have 23 witnesses on record. Law enforcement doesn't do anything, which overkills my point. Okay, there's no serious investigation that's ever been launched into the organized harassment campaign against me, even though I have 23 witnesses. Again, 23 witnesses. One more time, say it with me. 23 witnesses. Okay. So why won't they make a region, okay, in every country in the world, but certainly in America, where Freemasons don't go, where there's no control freak police officers, where there's no rich control freaks, there's no weirdos trying to tell you what to do, with phallic symbol statues and magic wands and say abracadabra, do what we say, and supercomputers hacking people's brains, okay, where corporations, don't need to protect their data, though they should either way, mind you, because there's not a bunch of crazies who are hacking people's brains and creating security risks for corporations. Look it up, I kid you not. And this has been something that's been in the news for years and years now, probably at least a decade, I'm guessing. This is something I've talked about with mainstream news articles for a long time. Popular Science, what have you. So, you know, in Wired magazine and these science magazines, right? Okay. So it's pretty straightforward. You know, if you trust science, you know that scientists, scientific studies and psychological studies that are the closest to scientific studies in the field of psychology have shown us that 1 in 5 CEOs, give or take, are psychopaths. They've shown us with the Stanford prison experiment that we give people power, they start acting like control freaks. And many of us know, all of us know, if not at least many of us, firsthand, that that's the case. So why wouldn't they create a region where you're actually free? The fact that they can't even do that shows you how far gone they are. Now, some of you might say, well, then who are they going to push around, right? Just because you're a narcissist doesn't mean there's not richer narcissists pushing around. That's basically America in a nutshell, almost across the board, right? So when we look at immigrants, okay, they come from places where narcissists push them around and they treat them worse than they get treated in America, or there's more money here or whatever, right, as the story goes. So why not create a region for free people and have the narcissists live by the border states or something, and then the immigrants go there for a time, the illegal immigrants, and they work, and they eventually work their way to the option of staying there or moving to the free region. Or people can get paid more, you know, if they live in the region controlled by narcissists. That way, there's a free region, and these crazies who are fixated on me, who can't leave me alone for the life of them, okay, don't exist in that region, and people have their freedoms. I want you really to think about the deeper implications of the fact that they won't do that. That's how much people are sexually controlled. Because in a society where everyone's a gold digger and a groupie, you know, so to speak, okay, how are you going to get the attractive female if she's a gold digger and they control money to the extreme because they're control freaks to the extreme? Control freaks, right? Freaks. How are you going to even make your romantic pitch, you know, when there's social control to the extreme, and that includes social distancing, and I'm not talking about wearing a mask in the coronavirus. I'm talking about people who just distance themselves from other people because they don't want it to affect their reputation, because they're not supposed to date people, you know, who aren't some kind of corporate worm. Okay? There's a lot of restrictions. There's religious restrictions. There's racial restrictions. There's cult restrictions. There's political groups, cancel culture, people wearing shirts that say they only date Democrats or Republicans. There's, you know, so many kind of barriers in the way. Okay, and I'm sure that everyone listening to it, who's an adult over the age of 20, I'm sure that they understand that I'm right. So my official stance on how things work is that basically people who fit the description of a Satanist, okay, tell people what to do, and there's tens of millions of them, and everyone else basically just assimilates into their cultures, and they just do what they're told. It's what is described in Jeremiah as shameless prostitution, right? Jeremiah 13:27. Your adulteries and lustful neighings, your shameless prostitution. I have seen your detestable acts on the hills and in the field. Woe to you, Jerusalem, how long will you be unclean? And you all know that after my flesh dies, there's no possible way to be moral. You know, you think someone like Frodo Baggins or Bart Simpson or Donald Trump or the Pope, you know, you have no valid path to be moral. They've controlled breeding for too long, and they've screened out the righteous for too long, and there's no valid successor for me. There's just machine-forged bullshit, propaganda, garbage, control freak, fairy, psychological construct type filth who would pretend to be valid leaders. There's no valid leaders. Okay? And what came first? Their oppression. What came first? The refusal to create a region. What came first? Them persecuting me. What came first? Them fuming and poisoning me every day. If you were the righteous judge and you saw this, and you saw the Masons and their allies, okay, are grouped together, they're yoked, no matter how you slice it. I could prove this in court. They're yoked to the people who are doing this, and some of them probably are directly doing this, and they're fuming and poisoning me every day. Would you say, hey, you know, why are you insulting them? Or would you say, why are they dumb enough to fume and poison you every day, even though you're the most righteous person ever possible?